Welcome to the August 2022 edition of the Cairns Report video chat. There's so much happening, certainly so much since our last video a couple of months ago. So it's fantastic to kick off this edition of the video with Cathy Devietti from Grant Thornton. Cathy, still a lot of uncertainty globally. The war, of course, in Ukraine doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. Inflation right around the world. Supply chains still a massive issue. But it seems, as we said in this Cairns report, this latest edition, it seems that things here in Cairns are surprisingly positive. There is a lot to be positive about at the moment. What are you hearing about the Cairns economy?
Yeah, I agree. There's just a really nice vibe in the city. Like, people are getting out and about. The restaurants have got, people in them. Tourists are coming back through the airport, and it's so lovely walking along the Esplanade and hearing those foreign accents again. And the Cairns Eye, I always call it the Reef Eye, get mixed up. The Cairns Eye, it's just the aesthetic that it provides to the Esplanade. It's gorgeous, like the vibrant colours. I don't know, there's something about colours that just brings out, the happy and the positive. And we've just had the boats come back as well, which is fantastic. And look, the Italian festival a couple of weekends ago, by all reports, honestly, they ran out of everything because it was so well, received by the public. So there's, we've had 2 years of pretty rough stuff, but there's so much to be excited about, so much to look forward to, I think, going forward.
And I think the interesting thing for Cairns is it's busy at the moment, and that's with only a trickle of international flights and visitors. There are still so many more international tourists to come back. So if we're feeling positive as we walk around the streets at the moment, you can only imagine it's going to get better. What about your clients at Grant Thornton? What are they telling you about any, positives and potential negatives or challenges at the moment?
I think their general vibe is mostly positive. I mean, obviously, there's the industries who are suffering from staff shortages, which I think is just across the board. But they're just busier than ever before. Like, technology, the demands of technology, supposedly to help us make life easier. It's just so much more information that everybody wants. So everyone at this point's busy, even the tourism operators. I mean, obviously it's not back to where it was, but there's been movement forward. We've got the school holidays coming through, we've got Christmas, and I know, our weather up here is warmer, but people will still come.
Absolutely.
My husband and I went to Singapore in July, and there's 2 seasons in Singapore, hot or rain, and you just adapt.
Exactly. We were talking before we started filming about the staffing situation internally at Grant Thornton, and you are, of course, part of a big national firm, and I was really interested to hear you mention that some of your staff are actually able to fill in some of the staffing gaps that perhaps some capital city branches of Grant Thornton have. And you said that Grant Thornton in Cairns is fairly stable in terms of that staffing, which is lucky. But tell us a little bit about, that's fantastic for Cairns because you can work and live in paradise, but in fact, work with clients and projects right across the country.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the positives that have come out of COVID. Down south, they've had what's called a great resignation. We've had our southern offices, a number of people have been poached. So whilst they've been trying to recover those numbers, what we've been able to do is, because we're a national firm, is our people here in Cairns are able to log in, systems are all the same, and work on projects in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and not only does it help the firm, but it's amazing for their growth. They just, they're working for different people, they're working on clients that are bigger, there's just so many opportunities for them.
Yeah,
they're loving
fantastic.
it.
It's great. And it's a great selling point for Cairns, I think, that, firms like Grant Thornton are able to, offer such opportunities.
Yeah,
so.
Definitely.
All right, so there you go. Some fairly positive vibes from Cathy Devietti here at Grant Thornton. Thanks so much to Cathy. Let's head downstairs here at the Cairns Corporate Tower and have a chat to Ranjit Singh from Holding Redlich. All right, it's now time for a chat with Ranjit Singh from Holding Redlich. Ranjit, It is our first catch-up of this new financial year, first quarter of the new financial year. Your thoughts, your take on what the Cairns economy is up to at the moment?
Thanks, Gavin. Great to join you. It's been a barnstorming start to the year, really. Anywhere you go, the city finally feels like it's alive again. There's people here, the locals are out, tourists are in, shortage of restaurant bookings. Haven't had that sort of problem in about 3 years' time that you've got to book in advance. So it's great to see. I guess the issue is trying to then translate that activity, that energy into creating economic opportunities in both the tourism sector but other industries. So hopefully that sort of activity that we're seeing puts us back on the map. People come here, people see opportunity, they start businesses, they invest in the region. Property continues to remain strong. As we're seeing, interest rate rises are having an effect on some parts of Australia, particularly in capital cities. We're not yet seeing that level of slowdown in the Cairns region. It might yet come, but the reality is the regions such as Cairns still offer excellent value for investors. So hopefully we'll get a stronger tailwind than we've seen in some of the other centres where the market has pulled up.
In this current edition of the Cairns Report, one of your key points was about a tourism levy. Now, it's been kicking around as an idea for a number of years. Mayor Bob Manning has raised it again. He's going to put forward a motion at the Local Government Association conference coming up. Mate, what do you think? Does Cairns need to introduce this tourism levy, raise money for tourism destination marketing?
Well, Gavin, I think so. And during my time as UDA president, I had spoken about this issue often. There's a bit of political issue at a state level. I think both sides of politics have often felt that they don't want to be introducing anything that can be seen as a tax and a new tax. A levy could still sort of be manipulated to be cast as that, particularly come election time. But the reality is, if you look at other places around the world, they do have similar levies in place in tourism centres. I think that as long as the money that is collected in and around such a tourism levy is in fact reinvested back into promoting the region, then something like that is an absolute must. Obviously, the governance structures have to be appropriately set up so that people locally, whether it's CTNQ and others who understand the region, understand how to market the region, are in control of that fund. That, for me, is the critical element. I think it's something that we should all be pushing for, and we really need to get cracking, particularly whilst we're going to be seeing an influx of international tourists coming up. This is the little boom that we want to cash in on, get some extra money from this levy.
And I think Cairns Regional Council has said it's the equivalent of a cup of coffee per night on your room night. It's not a huge burden. It's not going to scare tourists off, but it will also raise about $16 million is the estimate per year for tourism marketing. I mean, that's a huge war chest for our region to go out and sell the city to the world.
It is, and I think it probably outstrips the budget that
Absolutely.
Annually is spent at the moment on that sort of marketing. And the reality is, if you've stayed places around the world where such levies exist, you don't even notice until you're checked out. In fact, even then you don't notice because
$3, $4 on top of it.
It's irrelevant. So I think it's more of a political issue internally here in the state for us, and if we can move past that, then I think hopefully we'll get behind it and get it done.
Now, you with Holding Redlich, you travel around to different offices within the firm, lots of capital city visits, you work on projects and clients all over Australia, really. How are you seeing, I guess, having that national view that you've got, how do you see Cairns performing compared to what you see in other parts of the country?
I think Cairns is of great interest, and in particular, if you look at some of the Australian REIT funds that are starting to look for assets to prop up their balance sheets and prop up their demand for investors, you're seeing, commercial, industrial and other sites being acquired and put into these funds. You're seeing groups like Sentinel Group in particular, very active in the regions, places like Mackay, places like Cairns, they've acquired DFO site in recent years. There was a recent acquisition of a $30 million plus site where the old former Masters site is, adjacent to that, the Homemaker Centre. That sort of sold for that sort of number where you're getting big funds buying these assets. So I think demand for regional assets for places like Cairns will actually be stronger than ever, particularly as I mentioned earlier, as the metropolitan cities come off the boil.
Very good indeed. So it's good news where there, as we said with Cathy at Grant Thornton, there is some global uncertainty for obviously lots of reasons that we all know about, but it's almost that counter-cyclical thing here in Cairns where we seem to be going very well.
I think we just got to keep making the most of all the opportunities because as we know, things can change very quickly. So it's a matter of just getting out there and making the most of it.
Fantastic. All right, Ranjit, thanks for your time
Good to
today.
see you.
You too.
Looking forward to a big year ahead. Thank you, Gavin.
Definitely.